Yes, I do.
We're good to go then. Okay, we'll jump right into communications. Has anybody heard anything from Deep? No. Okay, excellent. Department of Aquaculture. Steve, have you heard anything from them?
I have not, sir. Sorry, I'm just getting on here a minute after.
That's okay, you're doing good.
Thank you.
Bill, anything from the Department of Health that we need to be aware of?
No, the only thing would be just that the mayor's water emergency is going to be starting tomorrow. And, we've been kind of posting that there's been drought warnings since July. And now we're actually going to start enforcing it. So that'll be starting tomorrow at noon. But other than that, that's all we have from the health department for right now.
Just out of curiosity, Bill, who does the enforcement?
The police.
Okay. So if they're driving around and seeing somebody watering a lawn or washing their car,
That's my understanding, yes.
okay. Diane, you had a question?
Joff's hand was up before mine.
No,
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask the same question that Joe did. How is it enforced? Is there a warning given first, or and then if it's a repeat offense, you give some sort of a citation, like a parking ticket, or what? What's the penalty?
I believe so. I think it's a $90 fine. I don't know if they're going to be driving around looking for it. I think they may rely on people to, register a complaint, and then they'll go out, or unless they're happen to be driving by and seeing it. So, and I don't know if they're going to be. I would like to think they might do a warning first, but I'm not quite sure how they're going to handle it.
Thank you.
Diane?
Bill, what is the role of the water? We have two quasi-municipal taxing district water utilities. What is their role in this situation? First of all, I know that the state of Connecticut, based upon other droughts over the years, had requested some interconnected pipes just in case it really gets a lot worse. But my understanding is that water utilities have some obligation to inform the city. I don't know what the trigger is. I guess right now we learned 40%. That seems low. But what is the water utilities role in, number one, informing the city, number two, in enforcing this water emergency?
I don't think, I'm not totally sure on both. I think as far as enforcing, I don't think it's up to them. I think they rely on the city to declare, an emergency, and then the city would enforce it. In this case, it would be the police department. As far as their trigger, I think it's when maybe it's approaching a certain percentage, maybe 45 or 50% capacity. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's somewhere in that range.
Any other questions? John?
Yeah, excuse me, has the public been informed, and how is it being done?
I'm sorry, John, you were a little bit broken up. Yes, how is the public informed?
Yeah, how is it being done? I have a house, I go out there, water my lawn, I don't know anything. It's just police shows up and they give me a ticket.
Yeah, well, no, there'll be an announcement tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's actually been it's been on the news already. It's on channel 12. I think it's in the hour as well. So they have to do, I think, 2 days of public announcements in the newspaper. I think that's already been accomplished. And there's been some announcements on the newspaper, the local television as well. But the formal announcement will be tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jeff, anything from the Harbor Commission?
Well, we've asked Deep if they've heard anything about the status of the Corps of Engineers permit or the Coast Guard permit for the railroad bridge, and the answer was no, they haven't heard anything. And we also asked if they've heard anything from Eversource, and the same answer. it's hard to believe that they don't know, but anyway, that's the answer, that we don't know what the status is of the other permits, and whether the Corps of Engineers permit will take into consideration the Harbor Commission's recommendation concerning monitoring of water quality during the work.
Okay. And planning and zoning, I haven't heard anything from. Has anybody else? Okay, under old business.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I could fill you in on one thing about P and Z.
Yep.
Yeah, tonight at 7 o'clock, they're having a continuation of a public hearing related to various sections of the industrial zones, which includes many of the parcels along Village Creek and any other industrial area on both throughout the city. There will be some changes made in an effort to, according to planning and zoning, to upgrade eventually. There are many people on, for instance, Meadow Street that have grandfathering. And there was a lot of public concern, also business concern. So tonight, and they've recorded earlier in the month, in September rather, they had the first public hearing. It's quite interesting. Some of it, some people, including myself, spoke about the need for better enforcement of our land use zones in the first place. So that is where it connects with us, I think.
Okay, very good.
Might I say something about that, Joe?
Go ahead.
I don't believe in, I didn't listen to that first hearing, Diane, but that the proposals for the Water Street marine commercial area are not included in what's being discussed at this hearing. And also and I don't know, I didn't look at the website this week, but there was a web page on the Planning and Zoning's website, if that's the right word, with the reports having to do with the waterfront industrial study. But the last I looked, that was taken down. There was nothing on that website, including the studies, the reports on the Water Street area.
Joe, I could help. My understanding is that the first step is to handle the larger industrial zones, for instance, Norden, and then the industrial waterfront study that many of us, I think, observed and maybe spoke at those public information sessions. That is going to be addressed in a public hearing at a later date. I do not know when that is, but you're right, Joff. Those are not part of tonight's public hearing. And I think we should all be vigilant about when those occur and see whether we agree with how they are, how the UTIL, the consultant, has been able to draft the industrial waterfront zone. It's going to be handled in a separate manner from tonight.
Do you know, and I'll check in just a minute, but as of last week, why that website was not, the reports were no longer on the industrial zone website?
Do not know. I don't know. Thanks for pointing it out.
Okay, anything else? Okay, moving on. Diane, MS4 and going forward from here.
Well, my report is going to be very brief. On the MS4, as many of you know, some of you now have read, have told me that you've read much of the MS4. That's great because it's an integral part of water quality in our city. I did not receive any written ideas or comments. And so I'm preparing just some thoughts that I would like to present to our committee and Joe, so that, as you know, the state of Connecticut states that all cities and towns that have an MS4 permit, they must update by July 1st. Some towns get extensions, but it is a living document. So because of the nature of our goals and our purpose, There are a lot of good and interesting things in the document. I'm going to be focusing quite a bit on public participation because that is a major thrust of the MS4 document. And we now have an interim operation and public works director. Her name is Vanessa Valadares. She's a really good and very smart person. I have been told they're going to be looking for someone to replace Anthony Carr, who resigned last month. I do think Vanessa is open to a more robust public participation where they inform the public of the existence of this document. They're supposed to, by the rules, have a regular conversation with the public, including entities, environmental groups, etc., throughout the year. And also, they're very amazingly specific in one section about affording the public the ability to actually how to file a concern or a complaint. There has to be a mechanism that is reliable, user-friendly, etc. So I will finish my offering for next month, and I'll send it to you in advance, Joe. And
I'll send it out to everybody.
yes, I'll send it out as a draft. Oh, and lastly, I just wanted to say, moving forward, I don't know if any of you had a chance to listen to the fourth of 4 videos by Yukon Clear, which is a wonderful program of education, especially of municipal officials. Dover, New Hampshire spoke about stormwater utility and all the process it took for them to finally get their town council to vote yes. The thing is, they're only 33,000 population, but it was quite interesting to hear how they did it. And I will forward to everyone in a separate email the links to the 4 videos about stormwater utilities. In a nutshell, a stormwater utility is just one of many mechanisms to raise funds to go back into repairing the infrastructure. Based upon what we'll talk about, I guess, briefly later, shortly, which is, the consent decree. There's an expensive repairs that are needed. This could be a way to fund it. Also, I just thought it was of interest to us because we're getting ready for our budget making season in the city this month. So they would have to have public hearings, etc., for next year, but it could be a very good mechanism to fund things. Thank you.
Jeff?
I just asked Diane a question. Is the city proposing or considering regulations or something that the city would adopt having to do with compliance with the MS4? Or are they providing comments to DEEP?
Oh, okay. What they must do is just file an update of their baseline MS4 plan, which they originally put together, I think in the 90s, when the legislature invented or told DEEP to ask for this kind of reporting back from the towns. So there's no, that in and of itself is just an update report, but in it, there are specific requirements. And one of those that
The reason I ask is that if it's a plan of some sort, or
Yes.
then it should be referred to the Harbor Commission for review for consistency with the harbor management plan. We hadn't talked about that, but just like if the zoning regulations are an amendment to the zoning regulations affecting the harbor or property on the harbor or the POCD, it requires referral to the commission. If it requires some action by a city agency. So maybe we should pursue that and have we could have a formal review of it, maybe with comments through the Harbor Management Commission. I'll bring that up to Dr. Pinto and maybe put that on the agenda for application. I mean, application review is the name of the committee, but it's reviewing proposals that affect the harbor.
Right.
And then the other thing
Definitely is a plan. It's a plan. So
we should follow up on that, because that maybe the Harbor Commission has a formal role, and it should have a formal role in looking at that.
Sure.
And it should be referred to the Harbor Commission for comments.
Yeah.
We'll pursue that.
Sounds good.
And then the other thing while we were just discussing this, I did look on the P&Z website again. and there's a link to the industrial waterfront study. But when you click on that, the page can't be found. So that was the page that had all of the consultants' reports and also the proposed areas for rezoning. And I'm just wondering, that might, if you attend the meeting tonight, check on that site first, Diane, because that would affect, it would seem, the public's ability to comment at the hearing on what's being proposed. But that's just my comment for what it's worth.
Yeah, the waterfront is not part of tonight's hearing. It is a different zoning regulation. That's because I guess, as we were told, when they separated the industrial zone in general.
But as I recall, all of those areas that were proposed for rezoning were on that website, and you could click on them, like in East Norwalk, and even though they weren't directly on the harbor. Anyway, I'll look at that.
Yeah,
again.
that's important to tell IT and P&Z. Maybe they'll have to extend the public hearing.
Well, it's just, well, anyway, that's my comment.
Jeff, when they presented, they intentionally stated that the Water Street area was not going to be presented and the plans were not finalized, but that they expected by, I think it was last Friday, to have the plans ready to go. But they're not presenting until another date. So we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, but my point is, on that website, I recall seeing the zoning proposals that they are discussing at the public meeting.
Okay.
All part of the same thing.
Joe, oh, sorry, John's.
John,
I just like to say real quick, I like Jeff's idea because some of that MS work is related to piping and installations and maintenance and other things that I have to do with eventually with our water resources. So yeah, I like that idea very much. That's all I have to say.
Louise?
I was just going to follow up on what Diane said. I also watched the Yukon Clear thing, and I know that, the idea of Norwalk creating a stormwater utility has been hopping around. We were one of the 4 cities that they did a prototype or whatever experiment to see how it would work. So it's not a new idea to Norwalk, and the Yukon push is a good reason to, I think, for us to write a letter. Just what our role would be just to say we support that idea. A second city, New Britain, has done it. So now in Norwalk, now there's New London, and I think it's New Britain. Anyway, a second city in Connecticut has done it. And the Dover, New Hampshire talk was really good. It makes total sense for Norwalk, and I'm just putting in a vote for considering that we make a recommendation to the mayor's office.
Do you want to draft a letter for that?
Sure.
Okay. And then we'll send it around. And if we get a major thumbs up, then we can send it on to the mayor's office.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments on that? All right. Wilson Point Cove testing. Bill, did you get out, or Dick get out and do anything?
The last thing that was done there, testing was done by Dick, was on the 31st of August. I don't think we reported it on the 2nd, our last meeting, but everything came up super clean. There's barely anything. I think a lot of that honestly has to do with the lack of rainfall.
Yeah.
Without it getting washed in. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? No rain, have a drought, but the water's a little bit cleaner. So yeah, so anyway, it was very good. And all our beach samples were actually in good shape too, for the most part as well. So
Excellent. Dick did call me in conjunction with that a little bit earlier, and he said you would fill us in. But he also wanted everybody to know that his crab that he has been chasing, he has found not only in the Housatonic, but they now have found it all the way down to the Mianus River. So it has hit major rivers in Connecticut. It's up in Lake Oleanola, and it's just, this crab is just gonna spread. And we don't know what a winter will do to the population. It may wipe it out and they'll have to start again, or they may be able to hunker down in the mud and survive. We'll see. Okay, Jeff, the DEEP consent decree for past violations, what do we know on that?
Nothing more than we knew the last time.
Okay, just for the record.
Last time that we met.
Yep. Okay, under new business, yes, Diane?
Mr. Chair, I remember you were saying that you were going to approach the mayor's office, and I don't know if you had a successful connection with them about knowing about it.
Successful, no. So we'll leave it at that.
I mean, one other thing about that is that Dick did talk to Ralph Cole about when there would be a meeting that the public could come to learn more. And I think the end of September is when the plan was due. So sometime after that, we were hoping, but it seems like Ralph, it's just super busy. And he said maybe something towards the beginning of the new year. And I had sort of thrown in the idea we could make it a larger water quality discussion. We could talk about all the good things the city's doing, the camera trucks and the relationship with Harbor Watch, and also get an update on this because the city is doing so many good things. So kind of maybe that would happen. Maybe that could happen in the new year. And then Ralph also said that the June WPCA meeting is when there would be annual updates. That's just what I heard from Dick.
Jeff and I are, Jeff has actually taken the lead on this, trying to hook up with the leader of the Harbor Watch, and we'd like to have a conversation with her. Because I personally was upset that Save the Sound was given more information on the data than we were. And we are funding them to a large part. And there's also a responsibility to the public. And for us to be the last ones to know that there were issues, and Save the Sound would be among the first to know, it just did not seem fair, because we have had an ongoing study with interns and Harbor Watch that Save the Sound has not been involved with up until recently. Diane?
I've been doing some research on my own about the process of what a consent decree is, this one in particular. I understand that Louise and Dick Harris met with Save the Sound and Ralph Cole.
No, that's not right.
Met just about the initial issues, not to negotiate the consent decree. That was later, and you were not part of that. But while I of course agree, Louise, that the city is doing many good things, the point was to make sure that in the near future, if there are many of us on this call have professional backgrounds. Some are engineers, they work for large companies, they're chemists. And so our input earlier, not after the fact, was the reason I brought it up. So so I think that having a public meeting to explain it is, of course, a good idea. I would love it to be sooner rather than later, or at the very least with us before it is a public meeting. This is a public committee, so but we were hoping to have a dialogue with the Water Pollution Control Authority and the staff about including us, and with the mayor's office, including us as part of the family when issues arise, because we could help. That was the whole point. And we, even while the negotiations were taking place, that could have been an optimum time to get some of our feedback with the city and the state of Connecticut.
Any other comments? Okay, under new business. Louise sent me a comment that caught me off guard, which also surprised me too. Louise, you want to enlighten the group about the AstroTurf?
Yeah, I mean, probably everybody saw, or if not, I'll forward it or put it in the chat. In the Norwalk Hour a few weeks ago was just the announcement that the Broad River Park revitalization project, or whatever they're calling it, redesign project, is got new life because there's funding, state funding for that project. And the plan that was mentioned in the paper would be adding 3 artificial turf fields. And that is, you guys probably know, it's at the end of my road, but it's basically right across the street from the Deering Kellogg well fields that already have PFAS issues. And it's pretty, well documented that turf fields the blades of grass have PFAS on them, but also all the layers of turf. There's PFAS in the manufacture of all the different layers of it. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. Tonight, actually, in Stamford, they're facing the same question. I mean, they're not looking at doing it across from drinking water wells, but there's a great panel speaking tonight right now in Stamford, and it's going to be taped. So I'll forward it to you guys when that's done. I think they have several of the same speakers that Citizens Campaign for the Environment had, another great group. It's better to hear it from those experts to kind of give you the background on the concerns about PFAS. So I just want to tell you about it. I'll forward the Norwalk Hour article and the Citizens Campaign webinar. And then I think we should think about, as a committee, commenting on this. I don't think it's a good idea. I do know that Rec and Park says the company they're using assures them there's no PFAS in the fields, but it's the same company that's being sued for false advertising in New Hampshire. And, they told them the same thing. The fields came in, they cut a corner off, they had it tested, and it was full of PFAS. So it's worrisome. So I just wanted to put it on our radar, and I'm not an expert, but I want us to know about it.
Jeff?
Are you familiar, Louise, with the soccer field at Wilton High School with the coconut husks as the infill for the artificial turf?
Yeah, so the coconut husk, the PFAS is on the grass blades and in the layers, so it doesn't matter if it's coconut.
All right.
I mean, that doesn't solve it, unfortunately.
Diane?
Louise, thank you for bringing this up. I will contact you offline for quite a while. I have been raising the issue of the danger of artificial turf fields, not only from an environmentally, because as you know, besides the PFAS in the blades, there is the rubber, tiny little balls that help hold the blades up to make it look like grass. And then, of course, you have the infield, the fill. There are also a lot of health and safety issues. There have been recorded cancers with soccer goalies. And I have asked the city to take a look, and I have an outstanding invitation with the Recreation and Parks Director and the Health Director, because so I will invite you or anyone else is interested in this meeting before they spend the $1 million plus on the Broad River program. And what I think is important is, and I've asked this of previous recreation parks, and that is, let's do an apples to apples comparison of the true cost from cradle to grave of natural turf, including maintenance, against artificial turf. all the costs, including the removal of used up turf. Big, huge amount of solid waste. But there are stormwater, they've found oftentimes that the materials and the rainwater hitting the blades and the tiny little balls that hold up the blades, they run off into streams, rivers, and there is an underground stream that flows right directly to the Kellogg Deering well field, that when I was a wee student intern, I sampled it for other chemicals many years ago in the 80s. So this is a very good topic. It is something that I think this committee could help our city understand all the pros and the cons, and it would be a wonderful thing to engage in, because some of us have attempted to get the attention and it has been challenging. So I'm so happy you brought this up. I was doing it through back channels, and I think it's important that we bring it up as a health and safety issue, but also as an environmental issue, and then as a good environmental governance issue. Children also are seen as having more injuries of certain types when the artificial turf it gets kind of compressed, and it gets actually harder than soil at times. And so plus there are issues with the heat, although Mr. Stowers, our Recreation and Parks Director, he inherited something called Cool Max at the new West Rock School artificial turf field. Unfortunately, that was passed, and they put a different kind of fill underneath it. So anyway, it's still an open discussion that is very much needed, and I have some ideas about how to have a public discussion.
Louise, you had a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm going to send everybody those three things. There's no chat, so I'll email them to you guys.
Okay.
And I've already written a letter, so I'll send you a draft of what I want to say, and then you guys can comment on it if that's okay. Maybe it's too soon, but I'll just send it along. All I did was highlight a lot of the points from the Citizens Campaign video.
Tom?
So you could use it as like a working draft.
Yep. John? John, you're muted.
Luis, do you know if they're planning to build a layer underneath? They're gonna put a cap on the soil before they put the turf?
I don't know. And I do think that this is early. I mean,
Did you
just
hear
from,
me?
yeah, I heard you. I don't know anything about that. And I feel like that the design, the whole park design, because 2 years has gone by or 3 years since the beginning, is going back to be re-examined. So that makes me think we should get our concerns in early, but maybe that would be something they would come up with, John. I don't know. I've never heard of that. Is that something that happens? I mean, the other
Yes.
problem with these fields is there's no way to dispose of them when they're done. You know, what landfill are you going to put them in? The PFAS is going to go into the groundwater, wherever that
They
is.
go, you get rid of them as general construction material.
But
That's how you do it.
PFAS is a contaminant, a water contaminant. It's not.
Louise, the little rubber balls that are in there come from tires.
Well, some do. Some have crumb rubber, and then there are alternative infills, like as Jeff was saying, the
Coconut.
husk, because those are so toxic. Like Norwalk is not planning to use crumb rubber, but there are still health issues with the newer infills. There's a lot, there's so many of these fields out there. There have been so many issues. It's not like we're wondering what happens when you put these fields in now. We just listen to towns in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, other towns in Connecticut. There's just so much stuff out there. So I'm going to deluge you guys with stuff to look at.
The fortunate and unfortunate part is I was involved with athletics pre-AstroTurf and post-AstroTurf. So we went through all the pros and cons and the injuries that could take place with regular grass versus the AstroTurf. and the cost of maintenance with regular grass versus the AstroTurf. And this is going back to the 1980s, I think, when we started pushing it. So a lot of that information is still around. There's a lot of information that's out there on the injury rate. Sports medicine people have weighed in on that. They've been keeping records on it. And hopefully Parks and Recreation have taken a look at that. But I also went out of the way to talk to an athletic director that I know, and he weighed in on it. So this is going to be a controversial issue. I think the one thing that may swing it one way or the other is a study what the state of Washington did with soccer goalies. And that is pretty scary. And when I read that, I just happened to know an assistant secretary to the federal US Health Department who has a daughter that just happens to be a soccer goalie. And she had never heard of it. And I said to her, when you find out more, let me know. And knowing this young lady, she's like a pit bull. She will latch onto this and she will shake everything out of it she possibly can to get results. So that letter just went out this past weekend. So we'll see what happens with it. Diane?
Yeah, we currently have 5 to 6 crumb rubber fields. It has become a political issue during budget making time when the parents rightly want safe fields without pock marks that could cause injury of natural fields. It's a maintenance issue. So we have had in the last 10 years, 3 or 4 different recreation and parks directors, Mike Mokay, and we've had interims, and each of them bring a different ideology about artificial turf. And it's one of those things where, like Louise said, there are many other states that have done studies. In Washington, there, as I told you before, there are recorded cancers. They connected the dots. So the city was asked to conduct a side-by-side pros and cons with a neutral party to discuss the benefits of natural fields, including better drainage and better maintenance versus these artificial turf fields. And some universities are now weighing in and saying we want to go back to natural fields, but of course they have to have the money and the personnel to maintain and make sure they're constructed properly, because drainage has been a big problem. And so I think that since it's budget making time again, and they are revisiting the design of this Broad River program, and it is so close to the Kellogg Daring Well field, it drains into the little stream that flows through to the Norwalk River. I think it's maybe finally a good point where we can have just a thorough discussion, because it has not been a thorough discussion. And I have,
Diane,
I have emails.
There have been numerous discussions on this. Trust me, there have been public meetings on this.
No, well, I've been following it and attempting to get us to have an open, holistic.
Going back how far?
I'd say
How many
maybe
decades?
15 years,
That's
20
lot.
years. But most recently.
The issue in Norwalk.
Yeah.
Has, I know a lot of athletes would rather play on regular grass, but the issue in Norwalk is within 1 month of using a field, that field no longer exists with grass on it because of the use that it gets with all the games, because you not only have a football team on it, but you have the soccer teams, you have girls playing on it, and multiple sports. So the sod gets away, and what you've got is a mud field. And that's part of the consideration. So you don't have the nice grass. And you have to go back to the early 70s to where you somewhat had nice grass. And a football field was only used as a football field. And most schools could dedicate a field just for that. And they had other fields for practice and for the other sports, but that has been used up very quickly. So the discussion, I think from our point of view, is the PFAS and the proximity to water supply. And I think the parents are going to have to weigh in, and people in government agencies that can pull strings on whether the companies actually have an amount of PFAS in the field itself that is of concern, it becomes an issue. Then we can get involved with that. But the other point that I've read and I've heard from several people is that the study was done with female athletes and they've not had an issue with male athletes. So the old expression, what's up with that? Is it because the males wouldn't complain, or is it because there's something inherent with the females' proximity to being in the actual AstroTurf? These are all questions that need to be answered, and hopefully our biggest point right now is the PFAS and the water supply. And the other issue is that area near the Deering well field that floods. So you know it's going to get into the water supply. Tom? John, excuse me.
Yeah, Joe, we could ask for a leachability study from whoever's designing this field to see if it in fact will leach PFAS. They can do that. It doesn't take that much. It doesn't cost that much money.
And what did you call it?
Leachability study.
Oh,
To
okay.
see if it
I didn't
leaches,
hear that right the first time.
to see if it leaches PFAS
Got you.
or whatever material they're planning to use. PFAS plus, I mean, the turf plus the rubber or some other material they're planning to use.
Now, what I've read, it's almost humorous, is the companies have paid for studies to prove that there's no problem. And like I said, it's almost humorous.
Yeah,
They didn't send it to an outside agency to do the testing. They did
no,
it.
you need someone who's not biased.
Correct. Yeah. So I will make that recommendation. Diane?
Right. Well, one good thing that's happening, we have, I think from Washington, I don't know if he's from Oregon or Washington. I think it was Washington. Robert Stowers is our new Recreation and Parks Director. Impressive resume. He is looking at, which he is making sure that they're doing an inventory of the use of the various fields, because there's a lot more need, there's more soccer, etc. So that then he can come up and say, do we have enough fields? How are we going to manage our field use? Because in many circumstances with natural turf, they rest. They will allow a field to rest for a certain amount of time. But in Norwalk, we don't have enough fields. They're overused at times. And so he's doing a study, and that I think will also help in the discussion.
Well, the athletic directors have already done that. You know,
No.
Diane, he's late to the party.
No, Joe, there are issues that caused a lot of parental about the soccer and who gets to play on which soccer field.
I understand
As
that.
recently as this past summer. So anyway, he is looking into past reports, like you said, but also bringing to bear his knowledge from Washington State. So that'll be very interesting as well. But it is also the crumb rubber that is a water quality issue, not just PFAS. So, anyway,
Anything else on that? Okay, Jeff already talked about the consent decree. Does anybody have anything else they want to add at this point? Jeff,
Could Louise tell us the status of the grant application by the Maritime Aquarium for work around Veterans Park? Has that been acted on or approved, or is it still pending by the granting agency?
Sorry, were you asking me that?
Yes,
You guys,
Louise.
I'm having my son's wife's parents. I've not met them yet because they're from Taiwan. They're arriving like right now. So I'm gonna have to go. But it looked like that funding, I'll send you the hour article because that's what my info comes from. Looked like the funding was good, but they don't know now if it'll be enough.
What was the
Anyway.
amount that you requested? We didn't know that.
They said the city had put aside 2.5 million a couple years ago, and then when they were working on it, they discovered that it was going to be closer to 5 million. And I think this state bonding money is around 2 million. So they have 4.5. This is just straight from the hour. I'll send it to you.
I thought your application was to the Long Island Sound Futures Fund.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about the turf fields.
No.
Oh, we haven't heard yet on that.
So that's still being reviewed. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything. It would come to Sarah at the aquarium.
Right.
I think I asked, and I think I heard that it was November when we would hear.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, I'll see you
Okay,
next week
have a
or
good
next
time.
month.
thanks, Louise.
Bye,
And then-
Louise.
Again, at the risk of repeating myself, that the public hearing tonight by the zoning commission starts for planning and zoning starts at 7, Diane. And I would just curious is if someone is interested in commenting, where do they see the proposal on the city website? It must be there someplace, but I couldn't see it when I went to the planning and zoning website. And if you go to that website, just look and click on the industrial study and you'll see. But I'm just curious as to where that information is that people would comment on. It must be there someplace.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I want to make a quick comment on the waters right now. According to USGS documents, and their testing at the Maritime Aquarium, as well as out at Cove Marine, the water temperature has now dropped to around 60 degrees. So that's a wonderful thing. And the amount of fish we're starting to see in the area is kind of indicative of that. So it's actually amazing to see how quickly the temperature did come down. And we did have a little glitch up today to about 61 degrees, especially in the surface water. And that's at both locations, at the Cove Marine as well as here. Okay, anybody in the public for comment?
I see 2 attendees, but no one's raising their hand, so.
Okay. From the minutes of the September 1 meeting, are there any corrections or changes to that? Diane?
yes, just one addition or correction. After Linnell Jones spoke, I know that I said that I was concerned when a citizen feels unwelcome. And then you have Steve Bardish's comment and quote, I think correctly, but I thought it would be important that we acknowledge the possibility. I mean, again, it's all dependent upon what that citizen says, but I did say right after Linnell Jones spoke, I said, of course, the Water Quality Committee is concerned when a citizen feels unwelcome, period. I didn't make any other judgment calls. I just stated a fact. That's it.
Okay, in conjunction with that, I would also like to add that I pointed out to her that she felt that we didn't do anything, or I didn't do anything, and I was the one that knocked on Bill's door, knocked on Dick Harris's door, took Dick Harris out so that he could look at it. And Bill got the neighborhood to agree, which took a lot of work, to doing dye testing. So the fortunate part is what they found was that it wasn't the neighbors' septic systems that were at fault. But I didn't say that at that point. But I also pointed out that I had requested, and I did put this in the meeting, I had requested Save the Sound do testing in the Norwalk Harbor. And I would like that stated in the notes. And I was told they couldn't do it. They didn't have the resources to do it at that time. So this is why Harbor Watch has continued to do what they do. And they don't have the resources Save the Sound has had for doing water quality testing at the time. And that's why I wanted them on board. But they said they couldn't do it. Any other questions? Okay, can I have, with those changes, can I have somebody make a motion to approve the minutes? Okay.
I'll
Second,
make it.
okay. Bill, you got that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn then? Steve and John, second. All in favor? Okay. Steve, I'll see you in about 20 minutes. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Goodbye.
We are done. Bill, thank you.
You're welcome, Joe. Take care. Have a good one.
I'm working on it.
I know. All right, take care.